here. In today's video we're going to be doing a unboxing and in-depth review of a new tool I've been greatly awaiting. I've been really wanting to get a new bandsaw, and this one has been knocking around as my top 5 picks essentially for quality and for price. This unit itself is sold on Amazon and a couple other little retailers. Walmart has it on their site and a couple other ones too, just kind of as a back burner product that you can get, but it kind of has to ship from a warehouse. You can't go and pick it up at the store. This one actually shipped from, what was it, Earth City, Montana of all places. But we're going to go through, kind of tear it open, take a look at it, and see some of the features and whatnot. I'm pretty excited. I've been waiting quite a while to finally pull the trigger and go and actually get one. There's a couple different ones I've had in the past. I had a I think it was a Master Mechanic brand bandsaw. It wasn't bad. It was a 10-inch. Same as this. It was just the lower rated version for amperage and whatnot. I think that was a 2.5 amp. And this one should be a bit better. A little bit more beefy in that regard. So without further ado, let's tear into it. Cardboard trap. Right. So we got ourselves a little manual for it. Their slogan is "Thanks for remembering when." I love my dad jokes and puns and stuff, so I'm going to be using the crap out of that, so get ready for that. Alright, looks like we've got a bag of hardware. It actually has a physical wrench. Some Allen keys. Interesting though. Most time you always get those little flat blade pieces of steel or something that kind of pseudo helps you assemble the item. It's their little miter push. Kind of tracking, a little track system. Actual aluminum. The back part of it is plastic. It's not terribly amazing, but it isn't bad. This is all plastic, but actually it feels a little bit more rigid plastic. You can tell it's just kind of an injection mold. Has a plasticky smell to it. Nothing too bad though. Ooh, this is for your track setup, so that way you can actually... See, I was curious about this. No one else really kind of commented on it. So for the when, you can actually adjust this within reason. I think a 1/2 inch one or the other is what this kind of made out to be. So that way you can get this right on for your measurements. And that's actually pretty solid aluminum. It's nice. Alright. Cut table. This as well as solid aluminum. This is plastic, a little insert. I'd actually prefer plastic over some of them having metal though, so if your blade does drift, you cut into a piece of plastic versus having that blade that you spent money on in time to adjust, gouging into a chunk of aluminum. Painted aluminum on the underneath. There you go. Underneath. Let's see here. Here's the fence. For those of you who are on the fence about buying this product, oh, do dad jokes ensue. Alright. Yeah, the pile of refuse in the corner here. Alright. Have a little lens here. And that protective plastic. That'll take me a second to get in there. Okay, so this slides on here. Actually, no. Yeah. Right. Let's see. What else we got? Woo! Oh, it's the legs. So this does come with a stand built in to the purchase, which is nice. You're not purchasing a separate stand for the bandsaw, and you could actually choose to utilize a stand or leave it as a tabletop, which was nice. So that way you don't have to make the choice between the two, was what also helped me make the choice on buying the product. There's a couple of them that look like I'd have to buy some big standing unit, and the grades of what I was looking at were either processing meat that can cut through bone and all sorts of crazy stuff, to your enthusiast grade where you're able to cut purely like balsa wood. And I wanted something as an in-between because I didn't want to go full commercial grade because, number one, I don't have space, and of course, very much, I don't have $3,000 for some of those big name ones. I was looking at the Grizzly versus the Wen. What ultimately made me choose the Wen over the Grizzly was that the Grizzly was more expensive for their 9-inch model versus their 10-inch model. Wow. This thing's about fully assembled. I've watched 1 or 2 videos of people kind of messing around with it. This one's a little different for how the box setup is. She's a little heavy. Oh, come out of the box. There it is. Wow. Ooh, got that new car smell. New tool. Alright, let's see if I can scooch the box. Here it is. Yeah, it's got a little light. These are all things I knew of, but it's always fun seeing. It's like Christmas morning for adults. Or for grown men, rather. There are some women out there that definitely do woodworking. Not saying that by any means, but there's always a stereotype and joke about guys and their tools and whatnot. I fully embody that. Alright. See, is there anything else in the box? No. Looks to be it. Oh, I'd lift it up, but this thing is a little heavy. Alright. So, they say this is pretty much ready to go out of the box, just with some minor adjustment as far as setting up the table. You can throw legs on it, but like I said, it can kind of just stand on its own. So it looks like the bottom of the bandsaw is welded into a plate of steel. Kind of get an idea here. So each of the brackets is just kind of a thin steel, thin gauge. So the component that makes this a freestanding versus a tabletop is essentially just putting on, I'm going to separate these 4 legs onto the corners, and you have some bracers to kind of go in between them. I think we'll assemble it as a full standing unit. I have 1 of 2 different ideas of seeing if it might work on top of the bench. That would leave me a better footprint to not have to worry about, but the downfall I have in this tiny shop is that my planer has kind of made its home in the corner, and I just slide it back and forth and utilize this space as needed. Other thing is, with how tall it is, I don't know if I can actually utilize it with this shelf here. So, I guess first question, or order of business, is to make room on the tabletop, see if it could even have a home there. And then you get the foam at the bottom of this guy. It's got some pre-oil marks on it, which is good. So it definitely could have a home on the tabletop. Alrighty, so here it is in all its glory. The blade that is on it was supposedly a very good kind of multi-use blade. Most everyone ends up upgrading, as they say, to the 4 teeth per inch version. Which actually, let's see what this is. There's 5 teeth within 1 inch, but I don't know what this is technically rated at. So it looks like the little turn knobs are plastic, but they're pretty solid cast on that, which is nice. So each of your knobs are plastic. All the interior components are either aluminum, like this little guard is. Otherwise, this is all steel. And that's welded steel in the corners here. And then for a dust collection, your dust collection port is right here. Ooh, and you've got brushes on your wheel, at least for the bottom. So I'm guessing you could probably oil that a little bit if you wanted to kind of like oil the blade essentially. Or just oiling here, this would kind of brush off any debris that might come up. And then you've got a belt back here that hooks into your primary motor. That seems really nice and tight. Steel all the way through, hooking onto another steel wheel. Really nice looking bearings in there. So that's one of the things I was noticing on a couple models, kind of as a side note, was that they said sometimes the little puller wheels are actually plastic, which is an absolute no-go for me. If I put any real load tension on it, I know those would wear out, versus these ones actually are steel. That's what you would hope for them to be. A little tiny little harmonic balancer in there. This thing works, looks like it's going to work really well. So this is an odd one. Is that just a grease point? So this would be for your light, which the light is all metal, and then the actual end of it is plastic, and then you have a plastic lens with a one singular LED in it. That's nice. So I've used a few different bandsaws in the past. Craftsman, Delta were the primary two that I used. I think I used, what was it? I've used a Ryobi. That one wasn't too bad, and that was actually one of the things I was looking at for a while, but it's kind of that closer to enthusiast, kind of more of a intermediate setup for it. It will do a lot of what you need it to. This one, what kind of sold me on it was watching a guy their little build video of him slapping 2x6s together and makes a little bandsaw box, and you utilize the full depth and width that you get out of this. And the motor didn't seem to bog, so we're going to test that here in a second, but just kind of doing a quick little in-depth overview on it. Got your adjustment knob here, so that way you can adjust this to go loose or tight for the blade. Everything out of the box actually seems pretty nice and tight. And so far the blade is right on it. So that was one of the things that they said, was that this was a bit more on the flat side. You can go through and do kind of a bandsaw mod on this to round out the actual wheels a little bit, just so that way it keeps your blade from drifting. So we're going to check into that and take a look and see if I feel I need to do that. I haven't actually gone through that process and done it. If I do, I'll make a video on how my results turn out on that, because I'm not going to say that I'm coming up with the idea of any means, but it might be something I might end up implementing, so we'll see if I need to or not. Counterbalance knocked on the wheel there, down here as well. Guessing that's factory, what they think this needs. Got a little insert pocket here for your wiring that goes over to the switch that goes out to the light. That's actually encased, which is nice, so you don't have any just basic wires hanging out. It actually has kind of a weave or coating on it, which is good. And it's tacked down so it can't get anywhere near your blade. This actually feels really sturdy with its construction. And you have a little graph right here letting you know which RPM this is set at. So it starts out at the 1,520 feet per minute. So it's on the slower setting, not the faster setting, which I'd actually prefer that versus it just going all out, just flying at it. I actually have the ability to kind of start out in a slower grade for my cuts and whatnot, but I am really excited for how well this is built. Seeming like it's going to be a good, strong little unit. So looking through the manual here, basic introductions, safety instructions. Motor on this is a 120 volt, 60 hertz, and this is the 3.5 amp, which is actually what I was looking into, kind of an in-between, so that way I didn't have to jump up to like a 5 amp or something. There's a couple of them I actually looked at that, I mean, granted, if I was just completely ignoring the price, I could go to a single-phase version of a bandsaw, and I'm like, well, I'm not trying to cut a cow in half on one pass. Not that I am whatsoever a butcher going into that, but it seems like that's immediately what a lot of bandsaws go into for grading and whatnot, and I'm not worried about, you know, the resistance that the metal would have in the coating to chemicals or processes going onto it. I'm just worried about cutting into some lumber and being able to go through a 2x4 or 2x6 or a couple of them stacked together. That was literally all I want for my little wood shop. Alright, this is the 3962 model. of the good old Hawaiian. Blade speed on here is the 1,520 feet per minute or the 2,620 feet per minute. Blade length, this is the 72-inch model, which I think they said it's like just under, but when you do purchase a 72-inch blade, that is what you're looking for specifications. So this should take a generic-ish blade for a bandsaw. As the issue I had with my Master Mechanic is it worked great, but when I went to replace the blade on it, there is not a single blade at Harbor Freight, Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, on Amazon, or anywhere I could find that was the custom size for my Master Mechanic, which was a top, bottom, and then a third point, and it was a lot shorter. So the thickness, or how deep the neck was 10 inches, but on mine, it was only like a 3.5 inch between the little guard and what it could actually cut on, so it really limited a lot what I could. I couldn't turn my 2x4 on its side and cut through it if I wanted to. So I worked with that constraint, but I was happy to not have that issue. And actually, real quick out of curiosity, it's one thing no one did that I was curious to know. Alright, so fully up on my guard, this has a 6.5 inches. We'll put the table on here real quick and see for sure if that stays true or not. But 6.5 inches is the height. So that's almost exactly double, or almost double. So blade width is either an 1/8 inch to a 1/2 inch. It comes with a 3/8 blade, which is nice for the width. Work table bevel can go from a 0 degree to a 45 degree, which is nice. A couple of them actually couldn't, which was odd enough for certain brands. Work table dimensions is 14 1/8 by 12.5 inches. 73.5 pounds weight. Definitely felt that moving it into the shop. It's kind of an odd weight when it was all centralized on the two straps as I was getting it through the door. Product dimensions with the stand is 26.5 inches by 21 inches by 58.5 inches. And I'll double check that to kind of see if that's actual or if it's like within reason. Just out of my own curiosity here. A whole bunch of safety rules and understanding that. Alright, so product comes with one bandsaw, 4 little knobs, alright, 4 feet, that's in there, 4 little footies, 2 long braces, 2 short braces, so I did get a count on those, and 4 legs, 1 rip fence, got that over here, 1 miter gauge, got that over there, 4 different sizes of hex wrenches, oh, yep. 4 different sizes of hex wrenches, and a 10 millimeter on one side and 13 millimeter on the other side. There's an actual physical wrench. That's kind of cool. I like that. Alright, and then a guide rail. So, assembling the stand. It says to use a 4x4 block of wood to lay on the back side here to give you the proper elevation that you need to mount up the 4 legs and the bracers in between them. I might kind of go for that, but we'll see here. Alright, so for the table, it's just 4 bolts that go right into it. And make sure the blade's facing the right direction, of course. Can't really assemble it without the blade inserted properly, but there is a chance you could go the wrong way in that. Alright, then on the table you have 4 knobs that hold onto the guide rail. Then you can, it looks like you swap sides of the fence just by taking out these 2 turn knobs. You could put it on one side or the other. Here, right? Go ahead and close the book. Hey, look at that, open up the right page. Alright. On here you have a little turn knob for adjusting your angle. Alright. It doesn't show this guy coming into play, but I'm guessing that's a leveling item. So they each have their own little compartment. Long Allen key. Here's the bolts. Here's the footies. Oh, there's your other Allen keys in here. Alright, so step 1. Must slide this on. These. So wondering, that was the one thing I was kind of worried about a little bit. So they put the bolts in the bottom of the actual table. And they all have their little pre-oil on them so they don't rust in transit. Already got a little sawdust on it, but they don't have to wood chop, so that's going to happen. Alrighty. Got washers on them. Try not to drop those. I hear that can happen. Alright. Tabletop. You know, let's be a little smarter instead of playing harder on this one. Look at that, who's a smart guy? Every now and again. My foreman used to say that every blind pig has his day and finds an acorn, or can find an acorn. You must get it. Alright, started. Get it finger tight. Alright, now, here we go. Nice length on the bolts. They're not ridiculously long, and they're not like two threads are biting, and you're kind of always curious if it's going to come loose or nothing. And open up the little package. Come on, buddy. There you go. This is the one that's got your little wrench. This is what I was meaning. It's an actual physical little wrench, which is kind of cool. So you got a 13 on one side and a 10 on the other. But it's an actual wrench. Well, let's see if it focuses for us. There we go. Alright, so these ones are the 10 millimeter. It's kind of cool. I actually have my tool bag on hand just in case. But I didn't know it came with its own little wrench. That's nice. So it looks like there's ever so slightly a little bit of play. Nothing too major or detrimental. Go the other way. Oh, your other left. Every now and again the basics escape me, but you know, then I remember, oh yeah, I do have a brain, I think. These are still tight. Yeah, it feels a lot more solid. Alright, we got a little fence. 4 little knobby knobs. That was one thing that was kind of interesting I was noticing is there's a couple build videos of some different band saws. Can't remember exactly. I've looked through so many of these and had this one on my wish list kind of deal for a while now, but there's a couple of them that actually had pretty in-depth builds for the interior of the unit. So much so that I was kind of going through it going, well, you got a lot of calibration you got to do and yada yada. This one's pretty much ready to rock and roll out of the box. Kind of just choose a side and get it in there for the moment, and then I'll measure and adjust as needed. So as far as basic installation goes, and on my video for my table saw review, having a single side, I was usually kind of about it, but because of how wide this is and it all being aluminum, this doesn't have any wiggle in the rear end of it, which is one concern I had that no longer a concern. This is really strong and firm. That's good to know. And it seems pretty well accurate. There could be some mild adjustment that you can make out of these 4 little turn knobs, but otherwise not too bad. Alright, and then this is the bolt bag for the whole bottom assembly part. You got your little miter gauge. Slides in. It has a little wiggle, which is nice. Certain people might complain about that, but actually I found not only for manufacturing purposes they make it a little wigglish, but also in my own complaints, if it's perfectly mitered and perfectly fits in here, any amount of grime, dirt, or use of the item without consistently having wire brush or something to clean it out causes issues. This slides nicely and has that little bit of wiggle, so if you did get sawdust just from using the product, this could still clear it out, and you can hit it with a little bit of air. You can still use a brush, whatever you need to do. Everything works in tandem with each other, because that's one thing that some of those perfectly mitered ones, or mitered, perfectly fit and machined items, if you were to try to adjust your miter on the table, it would actually like stick and grind on the table. It wouldn't actually fit properly. So you took it out to adjust it and then slide it in. I don't know about you, but every now and again I'll make my mark and everything using a miter gauge outside with my material, bring it in, set it against my little fence here, rotate it to what miter I needed, set it, and then make my cut. Because then I can line up my line and use my eye and all that stuff that I trust to run through with it, as well as sometimes you might not know exactly what miter you're going with. You might have to go off of what the house is, whatever item you're working on is, and it's wood, so there could be that little bit of variation that's not a perfect 45, 32, or whatever degree you're working with. And having that ability to work with this on the table, it's kind of a nice benefit, even though it's a cheaper component in some people's eyes. This actually still feels solid as can be. Alright, it's all good there. I want to hear this thing work. Impatient, want. Come on, buddy. Yeah. So make sure that blade will stay. Switch is off. An outlet right here for this reason. Oh, that is so quiet. That is so quiet. Oh, there's a light. I see the light. Oh my gosh. Okay, sorry. Geeking out now. So let's just grab some wood here. And it doesn't come with a push stick. I'm good without it. Alright, let's do. Alright, so the fence says 0 there. Absolute 0 right there. So if I set this up at 0, let's adjust this out real quick, do a quick little fixie fix. There you go. Come on, buddy. Here you go. So just touching the blade should be 0. There you go. Not that you would ever use absolute 0, but it's a good reference point. Alright. Okay, so the blade is ever so lightly dragging on 0. That there. Make sure the table's tight. Nice, it's got the spring and the little handle in the back there, so when you do hit the table with it, you pull it out, drop it down in advance. There's a couple models that didn't have that little feature. Seemed very basic, but alright. Also helps keep it compact design. So let's real quick on our material do a 1-inch cut. Is that gonna leave me enough? Yes, alright. So 1-inch cut. Oh my gosh. That barely drug at all. There's a little bit of oil on the wood. Let's give a measure, see if that little quick setup. I don't know if you can see that. Come on, focus. Come on, look at it, I believe in you. There's now focus. So I'm at 1 inch. That's, well here, we'll go to a true 1 inch. Burn 1. Oh yeah, yeah. Like, I don't know if you can quite see it, but right at 1 inch. Alright. For the quickest little table setup and run through, one little cut. Let's do it. Let's try a couple more. And leave that at 1 inch. Oh, dang it, it's in the worst place ever, right in front of me. Alright. Oh, cuts like butter. And it's smooth. I'll figure a reason. So, the only thing that seems a little odd, and I probably just need to press it down more, is this little pop out here for when you're changing the blade or if you have any little issues with this whatsoever. It's kind of sticking up just a little bit for my material to hit. But since it's plastic, I think it's just a matter of me kind of like tapping it down real quick. I'll be gentle, I swear. Might ever so lightly need a sanding underneath. It is plastic, but there is just ever so slightly. Gently take this in. Ever so slightly ridged. It's nice and flush on both ends, but it kind of bows up a little bit right around the blade. So I can probably just hit that with a little bit of sandpaper if I want, but I think that's just a molding issue, just for that to kind of stick up ever so slightly. So when I utilize my material and I'm pushing, it'll hit on that one corner. So that's the only little issue I've found so far. Alright, I went out and grabbed some stringer material here, and we'll do, let's see, 3-inch cut. Going off the scrap material. doing too bad. There's a little drift on that side, but that's because there was a little bit of drift to begin with, because I cut this real quick. But it was with a circular saw on that side, so this side looks to be flat and flush. Little push stick here. That's a pretty flat cut. I mean, that's like perfectly flat. That one is pretty dang close to flat. Nice. All right, let's try being scrolly-ish with it. Turn out for a sec. Reverse feed hand. Alright, so just kind of pick this up, move it back for a sec. Alright, so use that as a focus point. Did just kind of an S curve back and forth, the way I had it set up. Should remove the guard to get a little bit more crazy with it, but that cut all the way through a 2x4. Essentially that's all stringers are made out of, is just a 2x4 with a little cut in for the forklift to be able to lift it. So doing a little investigation, look, like this is very nice. Especially around the curves and stuff. I'm not seeing super little jag grabs every now and again. Now granted, a lot of the bandsaws I was using were for more commercial use, so we just had like one size, fits all kind of blade on it. But this is, for out of the box, not buying any additional blade, like holding it tight. There isn't some weird like grabs or throws or tears in the wood or anything. Still just quiet as ever. It's gotta be all quiet and stuff. Let's do a little box cut here. So 1 3/4 inch. There's ever so slightly a little bit of drift, but I think it's just because I'm pushing into the blade and it's kind of cutting a little tighter and then falling out to its actual dimension. So the top cut is just under and just over. I think that's just purely because of how I'm feeding it. I haven't done a bandsaw in a minute, so try the other end. So that was dang near flat. A lot better cut that time. I just took a second with it. I wasn't forcing or twisting. I'm noticing that I'm on these shorter pieces of material that are a lot longer. I'm actually pulling a little bit with one hand versus the push stick, and that's where I'm getting a deviation in my cut. Grab just a little bit of sandpaper here. Fresh cheese. No. But ever so lightly sanding, there is the slightest bit of darkness from the oil on the blade still. But otherwise, it's a flat cut, and I barely need to sand it at all, and it's little furs off the edge. Throw some glue on it, slap it together, pretty much. It's pretty good. Like I said, this is a hardwood little chunk. So on the hardwood, I just need to take equal pressure, which is any cut, and it would just go right through it. But it didn't seem to really like scoff much or give me any real backlash. Let's try the 2x4 trunk again. Let's make it flat-ish. So I'm cutting off all the grimy cut from the factory when we made this 2x4, and then just using the push stick, we're flat again. Just right through it. I'm not getting this crazy drift issue that everyone seems to have in the reviews and comments. I feel like some people just want to be keyboard warriors when they go at something, or they got one that was made on a Friday, and maybe I got one made on an old Tuesday or Wednesday. And drop this down to 1-inch cut. See, that would have been my finger, but I used a little push stick. Let's cube it. There's a little corner I need to sand a little. You got yourself a little square block. Just a little square. Oh, hang on. Make an actual square block. Two square blocks. Wait a minute. Let's have fun with this. So, there it is. It was a good little project to do. I ended up making some dice, and they turned out not too bad. Never made dice before, but as soon as I made a little block, a little couple of these guys, one more block, and looked at it, I loved how, let's see if it'll focus for you here. Come on, camera. Oh, you got it. There you go. So you can kind of see there, this grain on this wood is phenomenal. It almost looks very pixelated. Better way to put it. I don't know a better way really, but I'm trying to figure out. There's a local guy, I guess next town over. It's all one large city, but there's a little segment of towns here up in Palisade that does woodworking, and he leaves a lot of his scrap out. And it's all different, varying odd types of wood and whatnot, and I enjoy the idea of, I snagged a few of them because he said I could, and I made a variety of things off of the offcuts that he had just as a nice fun challenge. And I've had a few kind of cool different woods knocking around, and this is one of them. And I'm not the most precise at it. Like I said, I've never made dice before, but it was fun to be able to test out, make a quick little project with it. So we're gonna probably go through, throw a stand on the good old Wen, and finish this on out. So one extra thing I forgot to mention in this is it has a very nice dust collection port on the back that actually has multiple settings. So I'll show you what that is, because no one really said that. There's like a reduction sleeve, so depending on what you hook up to it, it'll actually receive it. So let me show you real quick what they meant by that. So on the back of the unit here, you've got this little flap that opens up, and in here there's actually multiple sleeves that all funnel into the same opening. So depending on what you actually hook it into, they'll still all just come out of this middle port, but it's all built in, so you can't lose any of your adapters. And then if you're not using it, the cap actually fits quite snugly. So let's give it a test real quick. So let me also give real life dimensions on things, because it's nice to read it off a box, but actually seeing kind of what it looks like in person. So your little measuring apparatus here, your little guide, 18 inches. But when you add that 18 inches and displace it so that it lines up perfectly with the blade, from the side of the unit here, okay, this is a guide stick. So the edge is 23 inches from here to this side. So if you were to butt it up to countertop, if you were to butt it up to something and let your legs kind of sprawl out underneath, just kind of plan for that. So one more time, 23 inches. It's a little under 23, but 23 will give you just half an inch over, a little bit less than half an inch, like quarter inch from this end actually hitting anything. So if you had to bud this up underneath something in a garage or wherever your workspace is that you'll be utilizing this at, that's what you're looking at for width dimension. For depth, I mean, of course you're going to want a little more depth. We're going back, but going from the back of the table to the front of the little hand right here. So if you had to tuck this away, you're looking at 15 inches. Double check that over here a little closer. No, actually, so 15 inches to here, but because the handle sticks out just a little bit, 16 inches because of the angle it's at. So 16 inches for this handle to the back of the table. Your motor does stick out a little bit past that though. So from the top of the motor to the front of the unit is 21 inches. So if you were to tuck this in a garage against the wall, your motor sticks out a little bit farther than the actual stand itself. So you're looking at around dimension. Let's see here. So as for width on just the legs themselves, at their longest point is 24 inches for just the stand. Width-wise, as for depth, you're looking at 20 inches. So it's a 4-inch difference between width is longer, or yeah, width is going to be a little bit longer than your depth. And then total overall height of the unit from my floor to the unit itself. So not including the knob, we're looking at 57 inches. if you include the knob and you go directly to the floor, you're at just over 58 inches, like 58 1/4 for the top of the knob. So if you were to try to tuck this under a shelf, plan for 58 inches of clearance. So that way your shelf isn't hitting the knob and it's not absolutely rubbing it to death. You will have a little bit of rock. And of course, if you throw this on casters or anything like some people might look at immediately doing, you're looking at sheet good material that's real thin metal for the legs. It's strong, don't get me wrong, but if you are going to try to mount through it or anything or weld to it, it's 16th inch steel. It's not, yeah, it's 16th, a little heavy on the 16th just because of the painting and the coating, but the steel itself is only 16th inch gauge. So just kind of plan that you can drill through it, you can mount some kind of caster or something to the bottom, but just plan for the riser and also the incline and thickness of the material for the weld. So that way you don't end up thinking you're going to throw down some 70-18 or something on this and throw a big old weld on it and you're just going to basically blow a hole right through the metal and material. If you're a welder, you'll know that, but just kind of a heads up if you're looking at that. I do like that if I wanted to on the base, you saw in the video of me kind of quickly throwing it together, it doesn't take too long. The bolts are nice flush, which is nice, but you could take out the top 8 bolts and then table mount it and leave it standing, or you can collapse it down to a very small package for a stand. A couple of these that I looked at having either a universal stand or came with the stand, you still ended up having to figure out where to move the stand if you ended up needing this to become a tabletop for either a project or if you wanted it for a certain amount of time and then you move into a different place that gives you like a garage space or a place that actually has a workshop and you do want to utilize the stand. You had to carry and have that stand the whole time until you chose to use it. This one, you literally could take the stand, mount it up, and then put on 2 little brackets on this back arm here that they just hook into. And this thing is so quiet, it has next to no vibration. So, I mean, granted this has got rubber on it, but just to give you an idea, as far as vibration is concerned, it's a pretty thin 1x1 hole right on top of what should be there or even here. And it's not really generating any vibration, if that matters. So if you did have some kind of bracket over here mounted up with the rest of the legs and the screws in a little Ziploc bag or something just kind of hooked onto it, you wouldn't be just hearing that thing clanging the whole time that you're trying to work with whatever you're trying to cut with this guy, which is nice. And if you were to do that, if you had it in the right spot, this guy could kick out and not even touch any of that item. So just an idea. I was actually contemplating about it myself. If I did for any reason feel this footprint was a little too impeding on my 200 square foot building or workable usable space, then I could still collapse this down, take those, put it in a baggie, maybe weld or put a little bracket on the side here to house and hold my whole stand. And I'd be just fine doing that. And I can actually figure out a way to drill like one hole through all of it that they could all sit in. And if I really wanted to get crazy, I could throw little rubber gaskets in between it or something, because if it is temporarily or semi-permanently going to be on the side of it, but I don't want to lose it, kind of a trick my grandpa said. A lot of times he had so many different varying tools and whatnot, if he could figure out a way to collapse and condense whatever extras came with it onto the tool itself, it was a good day, because he would have that less of a chance to lose it in his garage or moving or anything like that, because then at that point, really needed to, you could just throw a package of tape or duct tape around it to hold it to it, move, and then quickly take that off so you don't leave residue and nast on it. But side notes upon side notes. So that's nice for that point. And let's hook up some dust collection to it. So I've got 2 methods for dust collection in my workshop. First one is my rigid shop vac. Going across on here, 2 1/4 diameter, or cross on there. So let's see how well he hooks up. Alright, so the rigid shop vac is loose, so it won't exactly receive that. There's ways, of course, that you can kind of muffle a gasket or what have you. Now I have my large dust collector. which has a reduction sleeve on it for my planer. And for that little guy, let's get an idea on him. You're looking at 2 inches for that little guy. So with that reduction, I would fit perfectly, but my little reduction sleeve has this coming off it. So if your shop vac has just a 2-inch, it'd work perfectly. No issues. This one sadly gets in the way. That being said, the full overall port is this size. So I'm going to unscrew this real quick, and we're going to mount it. Long-winded. There we go. Whew, been a minute since I've taken that off. So just using a full-on dust collector port, which for this guy, you're looking at a 4-inch tube or 4-inch tubing. Which slides on like a glove. Make sure it's on there good. So just collecting or hooking on my dust collector ductwork. There you are. A little noisy here, but let's make a cut with it. Alrighty, so with the dust collector going, I could see, not that you can necessarily see from that angle, but they have these little holes cut into the top plate here, and even with them being away from the actual mechanism here at the bottom, I could actually feel a little bit of a wind tunnel kind of pulling on that. Now on top of that, opening up your actual bandsaw here, the door kept kind of closing as soon as I would just open it a little bit because of that good suction it had. So you can see in the back here, hopefully you can, there is a hole in the back, and that's where it's just kind of pulling any residual that might be getting pulled with the blade down in the motor housing. It'll absorb a lot of that and kind of cause a mild wind tunnel. Now granted, this is a 2 horsepower motor for the dust collector running, good old Harbor Freight Special up there. Now that is creating a lot of suction and is pulling really good. So if you were to use a shop vac or something, you wouldn't quite get as phenomenal of a pull, but if you're doing a lot of cuts, you're just trying to maintain keeping a lot of the sawdust that'll build up on the inside of the unit from doing so. So that's the main benefit to a dust collector for this current setup. Now if I really wanted to get, crafty or whatnot, and not worry about that port in the back, I can always take a quick grip or something like that and hook this up to where it just sits pretty much right here or off to the side, to where it catches any ambient cut, so it would actually eliminate the source of the dust before it could actually get pulled into the motor housing. So either method would technically work. So if for whatever reason you didn't want to modify or had a tube set up kind of like this little adapter I've got here for my planer, and you didn't want to nip something like this off or figure out some way to kind of either cut that off and put a hose clamp on the outside of it when you needed it for the planer, but still wanted to use that adapter on the Wen, you wouldn't necessarily have to go to that drastic of a measure. And a lot of times bandsaws just have it to where you kind of hook up on the side, or they'll have a little bracket that you can buy for the neck to actually hold some kind of dust collection right near the blade. So that all being said, I still feel very good about the dust collection on this. So when I do want to run it and I feel like I'm going to make a lot of larger cuts, I can still just bring it over here. It is a little heavy. 75 pounds is a little bit much, so just kind of keep that in mind. If you were to be one of the folks to weld or fabricate or just bolt on some kind of casters on the bottom, it made it a little bit more easy and mobile, so that way you're not having to tote around 75 pounds of kind of awkward, then you definitely would be able to just roll this over to a dust collection, shop vac, whatever have you, and it could still pull very well out of the motor housing to keep a lot of dust from generating the inside of the unit, causing wear and tear on the blade and also your wheels in here. So that way it just keeps everything out of your bearings, everything out of there, keeps the longer longevity to the unit. I will have to say, these hinges are really nice. A couple of the units I looked at had plastic hinges of all things. And if this is going to be anything that you're really going to use or want to have for any real lifespan, I feel like there's just certain components that need to be better quality. Plastic wheels, this actually still feels, and I've worked with some units from the 50s and 60s that had plastic components like this, they're still just fine. Little turn knobs and whatnot. If you're not going to be throwing the motor directly against plastic or trying to run the spindle off of a plastic bearing or something like that, or a plastic harmonic balancer, then there's no reason it wouldn't work just fine. So to kind of do a little finish up on this guy, I think it did good. My little project, just to kind of give an idea, was the dice I made for it. Do a roll here. So if you're planning on doing a roll of the dice on a product that you haven't actually been able to get hands on in a store before, and you wanted to have a good review on it and get kind of an idea of just a ballpark of overall height, weight, how it kind of works and moves in your shop, and how you kind of get a real life situation on it. Hopefully this has been somewhat of a good kind of insight and idea into that for you. And hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to hit that subscribe button as well if you wouldn't mind. It might have to search for it under that little drop menu if you're looking on this off your phone. If you do though, it's greatly appreciated. Every subscription counts. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers, hopefully get monetized so I can keep pumping out good content, keep pumping out fun little projects and what have you. And yeah, if you do like this, do you want to see it keep going, make sure to drop that comment down below. Let me know how I'm doing. If there's any extra insights or ideas you have on good old Wen and their products, or anything else you want to throw down there as a nice little did you know about it, I'm more than happy for any kind of knowledge I can get. Knowledge is not a dictatorship, so I'm more than happy to share what I know, and hopefully the community and you as subscribers and viewers will as well. So thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and I remember when I got a win. So thank you very much. Have yourself a good one.